I'm very excited to introduce our next speaker to you. Not only is he the acting Secretary of Ed at PDE right now, he's also a great supporter of school counselors and the work that we do. Mr. Noe Ortega, we are honored to have you join us today and close out our conference. Thank you for being with us today.
Amelia, it's an absolute pleasure to join the School Counselors Association today. And to everyone joining, sorry we can't be in person, but I'm really pleased that the association continued to offer the professional development virtually for everybody, particularly during this time when these resources are extremely necessary, right? All of us are looking for support so we could be there and be present for our students, and equally as important is to be present for our colleagues as well. So always a pleasure. It's been quite the year, and I'd like to sort of extend that year to say that our partnership with the Pennsylvania School Counselors Association started long before then. And in reflecting of all the challenges that we faced in the past year, I'm really glad we took the necessary steps to begin to meet with individuals like Steve and Jen and others to begin to forge a connection, a real understanding that counselors have always played an important role at our school entities. And it's important for us to figure out a way to elevate the role that they play, to get them a seat at the table at decision-making at all levels, because as we come to find, as we're navigating the pandemic, and many of us have known for some time now, is that the mental health and well-being of our students is an absolutely imperative that we need to begin to address if we are going to have any chance of creating the right conditions for learning, the right conditions for support. And one thing that's concerning all of us is how are we going to utilize those resources to ensure that we address what's been lost during the pandemic, from learning to the support to the routine kind of interactions that we've had that for many of us are extremely important, right? And equally as important for our students. And so for us, that's a really important aspect. As I offer closing remarks, I think it would be important to make sure that I start by saying thank you to each of you. Our educators have responded commendably throughout the entire pandemic to be able to pivot from in-person instruction to remote learning on a dime was a huge challenge that many of us face. The shuttering that occurred throughout the last 12 months and continues to occur even as we continue to move into the next phase has been a real setback and a challenge, and everyone has done what they could to figure out how to take what's been a familiar in-person offering to something that's remote. And for that, I thank on behalf of the department, the administration, each and every one of you for what you've been able to do. Many folks don't know, but my path into the profession started with the ability to also get my formal education as a school counselor. I'd like to often accredit that a lot of my thinking has been shaped by the development that I received during that time. While I never was formally moved into a role as a school counselor, it was a project that I was working on as I was completing my school counselor degree that sort of led me into the path of state policy. But one thing's never changed. You know, this continues to be about making sure that we create the resources needed to improve the lives of students, to put them on their own pathway to either personal, professional, academic success. And that's a role that each of you play each and every day. And so for that, we're also grateful. You know, we're pleased that the administration recently launched a special initiative to elevate educators in the vaccination protocol to ensure that we can continue to layer the mitigation efforts to allow for a safe return to in-person learning. And so we're just days away from completing vaccination for all our educators, and that's going to really create the circumstances that folks need to begin to move back into the more familiar routine operations of our in-school services and instruction. And it also begins to relieve us a level of anxiety that many of us have felt and continue to feel throughout the pandemic as we think about what is it going to be, what is it going to look like when we return. But I also want to acknowledge that many of you have already been operating in an in-person operation for some time now, and you've done those by continuing to implement the mitigation efforts. And so that's really, really important. It's going to continue to be important as we move forward. Now it's for a little bit of focus. I hope everyone had a really good experience in today's professional development that occurred for everyone. I like the theme. I tried to get into character as I was preparing for this, and I was allowed to get permission to use the background. So I'm pleased that I could engage in the spring break theme, but also to really do some reflection on the agenda that was put forth for the group today. You know, as I reviewed what many of you were doing, it's clear that there are some things that are timely and important and really allow for making sense of the environment, from whether it's how you respond to pandemic, from a legal framework, from navigating the day-to-day duties that you have as a counselor, but also a lot of frameworks, including what was put together by the keynotes on thinking about equity, particularly as it relates to racism, on that's occurring around us every day. You know, we're here convening just a few days removed from yet another mass shooting in this country. You know, when we think about how our Asian American, Asian Pacific Islander, and Asian communities have been affected from what happened in Atlanta, this is troubling. But then as we continue to broaden the framework and think about what's happened with regards to other individuals of color, Black men being murdered, even here in Philadelphia, and all these things surrounding the circumstances on top of a pandemic that many of our students have experienced. And that really speaks highly of what kind of role our counselors have to play when they return back to campus and students reach out to you. We're needing to provide students with a framework for making sense of all the events that are occurring around them, and to find a way to rebuild some of that individual self-esteem, some of that racial self-esteem as well, which is the necessary building block as these young people continue to develop. And we want to make sure that we don't shy away from some of the difficult conversations that need to happen, conversations that really build the thinking of folks as they move forward and make sense of this reality. I am always optimistic about the roles that our schools play, particularly when we have folks like you on our campuses, to be able to help young folks begin to think about how they can improve society. If the pandemic has been a lesson for me, it's that the disproportional impacts and offerings of schools were exponentially made known to others. But these are truths and reality that I've advocated throughout my career because I've known those things to be true. And I'm not in any rush to return back to what many people would say was the normal operations of our school. In fact, I'm interested in understanding how we can improve the circumstances. Because in-person instruction is something that we've not had for some time, or in-person interaction, doesn't mean that all the elements of it were working perfectly even before the pandemic. And here we are with a really unique opportunity to rethink and forge our own pathway forward. I think that's important. And this means that our students are going to have to understand what they can make sense of with regards to the events that transpired around them. And I think that's really important. And I really want to just issue out a call to action to the entire school counselor community that you continue to do what you're doing to help young folks make sense of these realities, help them regain some of that self-esteem that's going to be needed. I know a lot of our conversations at the moment are around what are you going to do about learning gaps? How are you going to accelerate learning? And we're very quick to remind folks that we're not going to be able to achieve the goals and expectations that we set for us if we don't tend to people, both in mind, body, spirit, and soul, in order for them to be able to just be in a way, to regain the circumstances needed for learning. This is difficult. I think a lot about what it's going to be, what it's going to feel like to go back to normal operations. Will I hesitate to reach out to folks and engage with them in close contact? It's a big part of my culture to be around people and engage with folks in that in certain ways. And now I wonder, am I going to put up barriers that are going to make people feel badly simply because it's been a year of really thinking twice about how you interact with others and those around you? And I think it's going to require a lot of rebuilding and understanding for folks. And I think many of you are in a position, as you work with students, as you work with your colleagues as well, to make sure that we don't lose sight of these culturally relevant, culturally responsive contexts that are really important informing in the things that we do moving forward. And so, I offer these additional remarks to sort of reconcile with some of the learning that you had throughout the day. And I know that many of you are going to continue to do. The department remains committed to continuing the strong relationship with the Pennsylvania School Counselors Association. We were meeting routinely in my previous role as the Deputy Secretary in the Office of Post-Secondary and Higher Education. We were engaging folks from the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education in Oakdale as well. And now I've encouraged the new deputy, Dr. Tanya Garcia, who came in, to continue to do so. And she and Dr. Kim McCurdy have reached out to a number of folks, and you can expect for that to continue to happen in the coming months and years. And with regards to how we're thinking and understanding the issues, I want to assure everyone in here that the School Counselor Association has a seat at the table with the Pennsylvania Department of Education. We want you to help frame our thinking and understanding of the problems that we're facing. And in any circumstance that presents itself to us, we're going to advocate for that to be the way we model leadership at our schools as well, whether it's our superintendent's academy, our principal institutes, or other places where we have an opportunity to engage with school leaders. We'll make sure that that's part of the message that we give, because this is a really important aspect. You have a lot of friends in the General Assembly as well who have begun to advocate as recent as last week when I went before the Senate to talk about the governor's budget proposal. Questions were raised about what are we doing to forge better relationships with the school counselors in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And I responded truthfully by saying we will continue to find a place where we could create a go-to place within the department, so counselors know that it's not something that's done situationally when they reach out to the department with either the Office of Post-Secondary Higher Education or Elementary Secondary Education or Early Learning or libraries for that matter, but where we could find a place where there's a single point of contact, where we could make sure that we're responsive to the needs of the community. And I know by engaging the leadership of the School Counselors Association, by engaging you in our continued dialogues, we're going to be able to reach this in a way. So with that, let me leave everybody with offering just a thank you once again and encouraging you to continue to do what you do it well, but do it safely in the coming years. I'll turn the platform back to you, Amelia, if you don't mind. And thanks again for the opportunity to be here.
Well, thank you so much for being here. And thank you, as always, for your support. And you can count on school counselors to continue to work with PDE, to work for our students, and we're going to answer your call to action. Don't you worry. We're going to help students not only to get back into school, but to also thrive once they get there. So thank you so much, and I appreciate you just recognizing the value of the work that we do, and hopefully, we will have a point of contact there at PDE where school counselors are able to reach out and get support. So thank you.
Fantastic. Well, with that, a virtual elbow bump to everybody.
Right,
Stay safe. Have a good rest of the day.
Right. Enjoy your spring break.
All right. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.